drive your car, you're allowed to use your phone, you're allowed to go on the computer, you're allowed to go online. All those things are permissible on Tisha B'Av, but it's like you're not really up for it because it is, after all, a very sad day on our calendar. So that's the idea behind that. So what I want to continue with, I told you that today we're going to talk about transforming the sadness into joy, the demolition into construction, and how the sadness itself can serve as a springboard for growth, for becoming better. So I worked on some slides here, and let's just conclude with the last one. Positivity may come out of sadness, even though it is inherently negative, meaning the sadness itself is not ideal. But if it can be an impetus and energize you to bring you in a positive way, then certainly it's good. Bitterness is an energy easily diverted towards positive. And that's the thing. Don't be stuck in a state of melancholy. Rather, allow yourself the opportunity. Oh, somebody said they can't see me. You really want to see me? I can't believe it. All right, here I am. Fine, you get to see me now. That was a message that popped here. So the point is that how can we take whatever negativity, and we all have missed opportunities or whatever it is, don't be stuck there because you have so much ahead that can transform it. I was talking with somebody yesterday who's going through a very difficult time. And this lady told me, it's not with her, her husband's unwell, and she was describing to me how difficult it is. And she knows it's only going to get worse because of his condition that is diagnosed to deteriorate further. So I said, look, the Talmud tells us a very interesting thing. In fact, the great singer Mordechai ben David turned it into a song. It goes like this: Avar ayin, the past is gone. The ha'atid, and the future, adayim, is yet to be. The ha'hove keherafayin, but the present, it passes by like the blink of an eye. Therefore, da'aga minayin. So what are you worrying about? And of course, we worry. That's part of the natural reaction we have. We worry about our things. But the point is, live in the present. As my mother of blessed memory always used to remind me, yesterday is history and tomorrow's a mystery. But today is a gift of God, which is why it's called the present. So, chaparain carpe diem, live today. There's so much greatness. Of course, our sages teach us we look forward to a greater future, and we have to be responsible, and we have to look towards that. But live in the now. It's a present from God. And the best present we could give our loved ones is our presence, being present, being with them. As my son, who's now 18, now it's a different story. He isn't. He's driving me nuts, but that's a different story. I'm just joking. Gedalia, if you watch this in the future, I wasn't talking about you. I was only kidding. But once when he was 2-3 years old and he was talking to me and I was a little bit distracted on my phone, he said to me, Dad, you're not listening. I said, of course I'm listening. He said, but you're not listening with your eyes. And it's a very important line. You got to be present, fully present. In our parsha, we read about Shema Yisrael. Listen to be fully present. So here, I forgot to stick an image in. Here, I want to continue with the halacha, what it says in Shulchan Aruch, what it says in the Mishnah. The Mishnah was the teachings compiled by Rabbi Yehuda Anasi long, long ago, nearly 2,000 years ago. What does he say in the Mishnah? This idea that sadness can be positively mobilized is so present and relevant in the teachings of our sages about Tisha B'Av. Because the Mishnah teaches that once we've entered the mourning period of this month of Av, we reduce our joy. What does it say? Mishanichnas Av. Let me try to move this down so it's not blocking you. Mima'atin b'simcha, which means what? That we decrease in joy. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Look who's here. Hello, Edna. Belated happy birthday, Edna. So good to have you with us. Welcome, welcome. So what does it mean when the month of Av begins, we decrease in joy? I started mentioning this yesterday, but I want to continue it. Because in Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, this conversation is continued. So let's look at it now inside the Shulchan Aruch. You ready? What are the specifics of reducing the joy? Well, it tells us in Shulchan Aruch, and we discussed it already in the past, that you're not going to conduct business properly. So you asked Rochelle about doing business. Well, it says in Shulchan Aruch that we reduce our business dealings. Okay? we reduce joy-inducing activities. Okay? It says that you're not building a house for the bridegroom or decorative building. We also do not perform joyous planting, like planting a king's shady garden or myrtles or tents. Yeah, you see the different things that it's mentioned that we don't do during this time. But if one's wall is about to fall, even if it is in the category of joyous building, you may build it. Why? We don't want a disaster of a falling wall. Did you see what happened in Jerusalem yesterday? A porch, what do they call it? Marpeset, collapsed, a balcony. And I believe somebody, a South African, was badly. Who was that? Which Levitt? I think it's from here. Somebody, I think they used to have the chillas or something. Which one? How old is he? Serious. Oh, yeah. He lives there? Lived there?
Well, he was going to the bakery.
Wow.
And there were a number of ancient bakeries. So
right. Where's this? In Rehavia? Sure. And we see these things. In New York, there was just in the news about buildings collapse or about to collapse. They were retrofitting an office building, turning it into apartments. And then the building somehow got weakened. We saw that in Florida a couple of years ago. You might remember somebody from our community lost both of his parents and many other people. It was a predominantly Jewish building. What's that? Barry Levitt. Was he Joe Berger? Is his son Daniel Levitt? Anyways, yeah. I know he's from here. I was told that in shul this morning somebody mentioned. We know the other things we do, but not wedding. We discussed yesterday about not playing music and not taking haircuts and all these things we do. So halacha elaborates on these specific ways that we have to decrease our joy in this month of Av. But later, when it speaks about the month of Adar, look at the bottom of the screen. And what does it say? Mishenichnas Av mamatim b'simcha. Just like in the month of Av, we decrease the joy, says the Talmud. That very interesting thing. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Shilat, said in the name of Rav. Notice all the different people who are quoted giving him the credit. Just as when we enter Av, we decrease in joy, so too when we enter Adar, we increase in joy. What's the explanation of this difference? Why are there no particulars given here when it comes to discussing the increase? It doesn't say, notice the month of Av, what does it say? That we decrease in joy with all these particular details. Don't have weddings and don't take haircuts and don't play music and don't build a house and don't go to work and But it doesn't say that when it comes to Adar, when it comes to joy. So what's the explanation for this difference? Why are there no particulars given for increasing in joy? Why doesn't it say when the month of Adar comes, we dance with joy, we dress like a clown, we go to comedy shows, we do fun things? It's easier to be happy than you say to be sad is difficult. We have to find ways. Yeah, we have to be told how to be sad. Halavai, Raz, for you it's easy to be happy. So many people say, "Oh, how can I be happy?" When I was a kid, there was a company called the Small Wonder Puppet Theater. It is run still today by the Horowitz family in Crown Heights, and Yaakov Horowitz and his wife. They run this puppet theater, and they brought great entertainment to us as kids. Any of you watched those videos, Uncle Pinchy and others? Yes, you watched it with your kids. Yeah, this is the 1980s. And then he had one called The Unhappy King. And it's a cute little video. Again, well done for its time in the 80s. I think I watched it 1,000,000 times. We didn't have a TV at my parents' house. So we used to watch it at the Jewish library in our neighborhood. They would have special video days. I think they charge us 50 cents or $1. What could you do today with 50 cents or $1? So you come and watch these videos on a Friday afternoon. Anyways, I gotta just fix the connection here. It looks like it fell out. Why was I telling you this? Because one of the videos he had was called The Unhappy King. What's the story of the unhappy king? The unhappy king was a king who was unhappy. And he looked for all these different ways to get happy. I believe it's a story based on a Medrash or Talmud. And they brought him entertainers, and they brought him musicians, and they brought him comedians, and they brought every clowns and acrobatics and nothing made him happy. And yet one day when he had the opportunity to help someone else, and his advisor said, no, no, don't, you're the king. And for some reason, he felt that he had to help them, and that brought him joy. And I mentioned this here many times, and particularly in the context of seniors. Roz, it's so easy for you to be happy. For other people, it's challenging. But let me tell you something. I try to smile. But there are times that are challenging too. Lucky for me, I have the opportunity every day. I go to different nursing homes in the community. I'm asked to present in different places. And what happens in these various places? I try to bring joy to others. You know what happens when you bring joy to others? It brings joy to you too. And that's the beauty of this. So certainly, halavai, if it's easy for you to be happy, kol hakavod. If it's not easy for you to be happy, well, still, my friends, we want to do whatever we can to increase in the joy. But let's listen to the words of the Munkacher, Rabbi Chaim Eliezer Shapiro of Munkach, and he says as follows: when we enter Adar, we increase joy, but the Talmud does not tell us how we're supposed to increase it. You see this? Good question. It teaches us to increase joy almost as a tangential remark, but there's not a general principle that the positive is greater than the negative. Why, for negativity, for sadness, are we given the rules and regulations how to reduce our joy? And yet when it comes to the joy, we're not given any specific instruction. Why would the Talmud speak less about increasing a joy than decreasing it? Why does the Talmud not tell us how? Rather, to the contrary, it was an intentional omission on the part of our sages. When it comes to decreasing joy, the sages enumerated the specific means to do so that we would not mistakenly think that we're obligated to be utterly dejected or depressed, God forbid. And let me tell you, I've been to places where people go, last week we talked about Shabbos Chazon. Shabbos Chazon, especially, I remember one year it was on Tisha B'Av itself, and it was at a particular shul. It wasn't a Lubavitcher shul, don't worry. And they sang Lecha Doidi to the tune of Eicha. Lecha Doidi likratz kalo p'nei Shabbos nekabelo. It was a real Litvish shul. And that was one scene. And on the other scene, I was walking on the boardwalk there, and I saw a wedding taking place on Shabbos Tisha B'Av with a chuppah and a challah rabbi who was wearing one of those straw hats in the summer heat and conducting a wedding. Can you have a wedding on Shabbos? No. And Tisha B'Av? It was a reform, a conservative, or I don't know what. Here's a good old joke. How do you know the difference if you're at a reform, conservative, or Orthodox wedding? So here it goes. We'll start with the Orthodox. At the Orthodox wedding, the mother of the bride is pregnant. And there are many people in this community, I don't know about many, but there's a few people I know of, particularly rabbis, but probably others as well, who've had children after they've had grandchildren. And I have relatives and friends like that as well. Then, at the conservative wedding, the bride is pregnant. And guess who's pregnant at the reform wedding? The rabbi. Okay, it's a joke. It's a joke. Don't, yeah. The rabbi's always late, what? Lady, yes. I don't know. I deny. Shame. Okay, we got our share of jokes in on that today. I'm just going to ask our online participants. I don't seem to find the button on my screen, but if you guys are able to somehow mute yourselves, I would appreciate it so it doesn't get in the way of the shiur, because some of the background noise is affecting us. So if our online participants can just mute themselves, that would be great. Thank you all. All right. Where were we holding? What are we talking about? We're in the middle of reading this text on the screen. So let's continue. Says the Munkach, he has an explanation and answer for us. He says, in truth, utter dejection is no path for students of our master, the Baal Shem Tov, and those who follow them. They are obligated to always be brokenhearted and grieving the exile and the destruction of the temple, but never to be completely dejected to the point of despairing the future redemption. Never, ever. In fact, joy is a biblical commandment. What do we say? Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. You got to serve God with joy. You know the song? Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, bo'lavanda birinana lefanda birinanha. You got to serve God with joy, right? And we know the verse says, Tachas, we're going to read it in a few weeks' time. Tachas asher avaretes Hashem elekecha b'simcha, since you did not serve Hashem in joy, it upset Hashem. Therefore, it's certainly forbidden to be completely dejected. And in fact, the Hasidic way is to be happy, to be joyous. And this is why the sages established only the specific ways in which to decrease joy in the month of Av, in order to exclude all the other manners in which one is permitted to strengthen oneself with joy and trust in God, with a heart full of faith and looking forward to the redemption. By contrast, when one enters Adar, there's no specific way in which to increase the joy, because the positive, my friends, is greater than the negative. Like Raz says, it's easy to be happy. You don't need specific instructions. There's no limit to increase the joy, says the Munkatcher. No area of life that is excluded from this mitzvah. Obviously, within the realm of, there was, you don't have to become a hippie. There are certain Woodstock behaviors that brought joy. You don't have to go to supernatural joy. There's plenty natural, happy, good ways that we don't need to use what's that? No enhancers, exactly. So what's the Munkatcher saying, essentially? When it comes to sadness, the Talmud is careful. It's defining the limits of our obligation. You don't have to be too sad. In fact, in this week's Parsha, the Torah says, don't add to the Torah, don't decrease from the Torah. And Rashi gives some examples there. There are 4 kinds that we bring, the Lulav, Asher, Gadasam, Aravas, on Sukkot. You don't have to add a 5th, and don't make it 3. And when it comes to tzitzis, there's 4 corners. You don't have to have 5 or 6 or 3 or 2, right? Don't start. So the sages gave us the specific ways that we decrease the joy. The sadness of Av has a practice, has a precise, an exact amount, how the extent of the way the sages specifically determined and specified how we're meant to be sad. Right? And that limit that the sages gave us prevents us from keeping this commandment into any excess manner that would fall into despair, God forbid. People get despondent. Okay? We don't want that. But when it comes to the joy in the month of Av, with the joy of Adar, there are no limits. Unlike sadness, there's no such thing as excess joy. The more the merrier. The happier you could be, great. There's no concern that you're going to be too happy. Halavai, right? So go, be happy. And therefore, my friends, I need to take you into another element and aspect of Tisha B'Av. The notion of a healthy, purposeful sadness we see within Tisha B'Av itself. In fact, somebody in our community, a woman gave birth to a baby, and I was checking when we were allowed to do the baby naming. And the rabbi told me, you do the baby naming when? In the afternoon, when the customs of sadness start to be diminished. Because in the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, we actually already start decreasing the sadness. Right? So far we talked about how there's mourning on Tisha B'Av. But now I think it's important that we should talk about the limits to that mourning and the paradoxical custom of actually doing certain things that actively show are diminishing the sadness and mourning on Tisha B'Av. So, for example, we read on Tisha B'Av tomorrow night, we read the book of Lamentations of Eicha. And most of the book is about the destruction of Jerusalem and the prophet Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu's anguish at the punishment that's brought upon our people. His people, he is our prophet. They didn't listen to the prophecy, to his prophecies, and to Isaiah's, Yeshayahu Navi's prophecies. And it's a work that perhaps could bring one to falling and feeling despair, right? To a sense that God has forsaken the Jewish people. You read the words in Eicha, and there's a lot to cry. Even the tune is so sad, it makes you want to cry. In fact, the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Meir says, that when they came to the verse in Eicha, where it says, Yitem b'yafar piu olay yesh tikva, let him put his mouth in the dust, perhaps there might be hope. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Ami would cry out all this punishment and only perhaps, you know how many calamities and tragedies our people have endured? And Rashi says all these torments have already fallen upon them. And yet it is still in doubt whether we will have hope. And we know at the end of the day, what is the song of the anthem of Israel, the Jewish people? Hatikva. Kol od balevav, as long as there's hope in the heart, right? It's true. Okay, Benny Friedman has a better song for us. Yesh tikva, im nashikulanu yachad. There's hope. But you know what? Religious or not, the idea of hope is a Jewish theme. Hope. Yesh tikva, we have hope. Let's look at the final words of Kinos, not a Kinos, of Eicha. I see I didn't put this on the screen. My apologies. I don't know how it got cut out. I thought I put it in. What do we say at the end? Hashiveinu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekadem, which means return us to you, Hashem, and we will be returned. Please renew our days of old. And we continue and then repeat the same verse. What do we say? Ki ma'ois mi'astanu kafatz aleinu had miyod, which means, for you have truly rejected us and bitterly raged against us. And then we repeat that verse again. Hashiveinu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva, return us to you, Hashem, and we will return. We'll do teshuvah, we'll repent. Chadesh yameinu kekadem. Renew our days. We end on a positive note. Renew our days as the days of old, the good old days, right? You ever look back at those pictures of memories? The good old days. Those were the days, my friends. Make sure they never end. Tra-da-da. Notice I changed the words, right? Da-da-da-da-da-dee-da-la-la-la. Come on, let's sing it. Da-da-da-la-la-la. La-da-da-da-da-da. Da-dee-da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da. Okay, you see, even Eicha could end on a positive note. Renew the days of old. Why do we say that we return to? We need Hashem. We know Hashem. You reach out. Maybe we need some assistance. King Solomon says, Hashem, just make for me the opening of a needle hole. Just make. Now the question is, was King Solomon saying that we have to make the opening and Hashem will do the rest? Or is he saying that Hashem makes the opening? But either way, it's reciprocal, our relationship with Hashem. Ani ledodi, ledodi li. In 3 weeks is going to be Elul. Ani ledodi v'dolidi. I'm to my beloved and my beloved is to me. We ask Hashem, come, let's renew that relationship. Let's renew our vows. So, it is a sad note, but the penultimate verse is positive, right? And we repeat it. We repeat it. We say it again. And note the second time. Chadesh yameinu kekadem. We say it in a more comforting way, right? So we're not negating the mourning, and we read the book of Eicha in a sad tone, right? It is a lamentation. But at the same time, we don't negate the mourning and our grief of the destruction of the temple. But neither do we embrace a worldview in which God is indefinitely wrathful towards his people. We realize there is a better future. While the book of Eicha, throughout, we're going to read this whole book and it has all these terrible, tragic events, but we're ending on a positive note. We don't settle for a depressing sadness, a dejection that saps us of our energy. On the contrary, as we repeat this verse, we realize we're tapping into, like we said yesterday, this whole idea of a sadness that will lead to joy, that is an impetus, that is a springboard, that energizes us to take our brokenheartedness and move into action. And that's why right after Tisha B'Av, right away, in fact, in the afternoon, we're going to talk about some of the customs. So let's talk about some of those customs right now, some of the things we do. So let's read here, the Rabbi Moshe Isserles in Shulchan Aruch says, V'noyagin lemer k'tzas nechama. The custom is to speak words, divrei tchumin, words of comfort. In fact, it's a customary that the rabbi gives a uplifting, motivating, inspiring speech in Tisha B'Av afternoon. Okay? So as to end on a comforting note. That Tisha B'Av shouldn't just be a time of, oh, how bad we messed up. I remember somebody saying one year, Tisha B'Av, next year we'll have an even better Tisha B'Av. You know, the difference between the Jewish optimist and the Jewish pessimist. You know the difference? You didn't know there could be a Jewish optimist and pessimist. So the Jewish, which one do we say? The pessimist, which one do we start with? I don't know which one's which. But one says, the pessimist says, oh, it's so bad, it can't get any worse. And the Jewish optimist says, oh, no, it could get a lot worse, I tell you. But the Hasidic custom that Baal Shem Tov taught was, you know, we don't want this despairing sadness and thoughts of hopelessness. That stems from the Yetzer Hara, from the evil inclination. And this evil inclination is placed within an individual by God for only one purpose. Why? To prevent us from fulfilling our divine mission in this world. And therefore we have to always, even on Tisha B'Av, be mindful of feelings of sadness or negativity. And we have to make sure that that they're motivating us to make changes for the better. That's the point. To do the positive, to do the right thing, to go in the right way. Let's read this beautiful letter from the Rebbe on the screen. That says the Rebbe, when a person is constantly filled with thoughts of feelings of remorse over past misconduct, does that happen? Do we make mistakes? Do we ever mess up? Not you, I mean, but just me. Ain't tzaddik ashiyah, and I'm not a tzaddik. If King Solomon says that there's no such thing as a tzaddik, a holy, righteous, pious, noble person, ashiyah tova, only does good, v'lo yachta, never sins. Is there such a person? Not even a tzaddik. Moses was punished for striking a rock. The rest of us, you know, we have our own shortcomings. Does that mean we're bad? Just because I failed, does that mean I'm a failure? Of course not. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Bam, 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 bam. You know, that's all right. If you get knocked down, get up again. King Solomon said, we're quoting a lot of King Solomon today. He says a tzaddik falls again and again, but gets back up, right? So it says the Rebbe here, it's important to determine the source of these thoughts, whether they're emanating from the positive inclination, from the Yetzer Tov, such as an action, what am I going to do about it? Like I mentioned what my mother said when she was in the hospital. I cried and she said, the crying's not helping. What are you doing about it? You want to say Tehillim, say Tehillim. You're not a doctor. You could study about this. Learn how to adapt and accommodate. As I was walking down the steps to come here, I got a phone call from one of my congregants who moved to Israel. And he told me last week he was unwell. We should pray for him. He just called me to say the doctor confirmed the diagnosis. It's a certain condition, not very good, cancer. But the doctor said, don't worry, we'll operate. We caught it on time. It was by fluke that they caught it. He had something else was bothering him, and they decided to do an MRI. You know, so the doctor said, don't worry. So here he was feeling sick with one thing. They caught it, and right now it's benign or whatever. It's there. It is a tumor. They have to remove it, but they caught it on time. And he's very hopeful and positive. He said he felt that I should know because we're praying for him. We put him on the Shabbat list of our shul community. He said it's important. He felt it's important to update me about it. What's my point? That where is it coming from? If it's coming from the evil inclination, that should be pushed aside. But if there's something you could do about it, you definitely can. Whether it's prayer, whether it's learning about the conditions so you can make the right changes. Says the Rebbe, the best way of determining this, how do you know where it's coming from? Is by examining the consequence of these thoughts. What are those thoughts doing to you? If they lead to additional energy and vitality in the performance of mitzvahs, conducting oneself to an even stronger degree according to Jewish law, then this is proof that these thoughts come from a good place. Why? Even though it's negative, you're feeling bad, you're feeling down, but you know that you're inspired now to say more Tehillim and to do more good deeds and to make the world a better, you know, it's coming from the right place and it will get better. If by contrast they lead to sadness and melancholy, neglect and laziness, interesting terminology the Rebbe is using here, or to feelings of hopelessness, then this is an indication that they come from the evil inclination, which has hid and donned garments of piety. For all the above hinder the individual in his divine service. My friends, this is important for us to realize, that our feelings, especially feelings of sadness and regret, are best judged by the results. If it leads to renewed energy in a positive way, my friends, you know you're on the right way, even if it's sad feelings. But if it leads you to do something that cultivate that sadness, because that sadness is becoming your springboard to do better. But if it's leading you to despair and despondence, reject it, get rid of it, send it flying. So my friends, this is the balanced approach that we need, that just as we have on Tisha B'Av, that on Tisha B'Av, on the one hand, we mourn for the destruction of the temple, even thousands of years after it was destroyed. And on Tisha B'Av, we remember all the terrible, tragic calamities and painful events in our history. But our grief is not an unlimited, purposeless sadness. Remember that it's not about despair and despondence. It is a limited, directed melancholy that is motivating us. It's a bitterness that encourages us to change for our future. And that's why we are going to talk about the more upbeat, more positive customs on Tisha B'Av. So when you look at it this way, it's not just an engine for growth, a motivator to change things for the better, which hopefully it is. But there's a much deeper dimension that I want to look at with you to the sadness of Tisha B'Av. And let's uncover that this sadness, after all these years of the temple's destruction, and that we're mourning for it, is not just about the bricks and mortar of a destroyed temple. Because hopefully it is also motivating us from the destruction to move into a renovation and a reconstruction. Think about our own personal experiences. We realize that we are all complex creations, right? We all have, we often feel contradictory feelings. What do they call that? There's a name for it, cognitive dissonance, right? Familiar with that one? We perceive aspects, different things in ourselves, right? The professor could say, don't smoke because it causes lung cancer. And he's seen patient after patient with that condition, and then he still smokes. And how many of us as parents tell our things to do? Children, don't do this or don't do that. And we go do it ourselves. But the truth is, the Zohar says something very interesting. How is it possible that on Tisha B'Av, we could feel both the sadness and joy, both on this one day? How is that possible? In the words of the Zohar, as you can see on the screen, weeping is lodged on one side of my heart and joy on the other. Notice, like as an example, sometimes you're at a wedding and you're crying tears of joy. You're not sad. But says the Zohar, this phenomenon specifically about Tisha B'Av, where on the one hand, we are sad for all those, there's a grief for the tragedies. But at the same time, there's an element of joy. We call this day a holiday. Hold on, holiday? What's going on here? But my friends, it is an ancient custom that when we conclude studying a tractate of Talmud, what do? We celebrate, right? And it's always been a joyous occasion for rabbis and scholars, for laymen and academics alike. In fact, next week in this community, there's going to be a big siyum, and they have a singer from overseas, Joey Newcomb, coming to town because a whole group of people in our community are finishing a tractate of Talmud, and they didn't want to just have a little party. They wanted to make it a big party, so they brought a singer and entertainer. I feel like this is the first year in a long time that we have so many singers and entertainers coming from overseas. We had Simcha Leiner a couple of months just before Pesach. We have Joey Newcomb next week, and then we have Avram Fried next month. So lots of good, joyous occasions. What are we celebrating? Celebrating the completion of a tractate of Talmud. And it is a celebration that's not mentioned when the sages list the ways that we are to decrease in the joy in the month of Av. It doesn't say that you're not allowed to have a siyum, which is why many communities have a custom that during this month, especially in the 9 days, but even leading up to Tu B'Av, that people finish tractates of Talmud. And in fact, each of the 9 days, different people in the community are finishing a different tractate of the Talmud. Look at this right here in the Shulchan Malachim. What does it say? On the night of Yom Tov, many tzaddikim, righteous people, are accustomed not to sit in the study hall, but rather in their homes, alone or in the small numbers. It is also their custom that for the day at the beginning of Av, they finish tractates of the Talmud and eat feasts with meat and wine. So although the Chabad custom is we don't actually eat meat, but many people do. When I was a kid in camp, they used to serve meat in the 9 days. I don't know why they had to. Couldn't go 9 days without. And meat's expensive, but I guess they felt that it's important for kids to have their protein. So they would give us meat, even in the 9 days. And they said it's because you had a siyum. They would make a siyum at the dinner, and we would eat meat in the 9 days. But what's the reason for this? What are we happy about? And I think we even do a siyum on Tisha B'Av itself on the end of the day. You know, our sages are telling us that we can hold both truths. On the one hand, we're sad, but at the same time, while it's true that there's what to be sad about, we also have to find, as the Zohar says, there's joy in the other side of my heart. Now we have 4 ventricles of our heart, so there's room for lots of things, right? So what positive, joyous events are we happy about on this tragic day? What could they be happy about? So let's continue reading. Both of these customs stem from the obligation and commandment to preempt the future redemption, when we will all live in Israel. And the second day of Yom Tov, which is practiced only in exile, will no longer be observed. So too will the days of Av transform into days of joy in the future. So I see a very interesting insight here. Yes, on the one hand, the month of Av, this time of the year, there's great sadness. So many calamities and tragedies happen to us at this time, as we discussed. But in the future, Mashiach will come and the temple will be rebuilt and Av will become a month of rejoicing. So we have customs of mourning that reflect the sadness on one side of our heart. But at the same time, we have to prepare for better times. And so we hold a place in our heart. And we have even customs in the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, not to play music, but other forms of rejoicing. Make a siyum. We get up from the low chair. We move away. We diminish the sadness. So this simultaneous joy and sadness is something important that we have to realize. Yesterday, Moshe mentioned how when Joseph's Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, and they told their father that Joseph was dead, what does it say about Yaakov's feelings? Vayima'en lehisnachem, that Jacob refused to be comforted. And the sages explained that he could not be comforted. Why? I chose to put this in today's slide because you mentioned this yesterday. Because, as the sages put it, one cannot be comforted when Yaakov couldn't be comforted while Yosef was still alive. And one cannot be comforted while their loved one is still alive. Let's read it in the words here. One does not accept consolation for a living person presumed dead. Regarding the dead, God has decreed that will be forgotten from one's heart, but it has not been so decreed regarding the living. And the same is true what we say about Tisha B'Av, that we have yet to be consoled, comforted for the destruction of the temple, even though it's so long ago. We as a Jewish people never forget. In fact, at every house of mourning, a Shiva home, what are the traditional words of consolation that we offer? The words of solace to a mourner. that Hashem should comfort them amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And what's the connection of Zion and Jerusalem to a person mourning their beloved departed? And the Rebbe explained this very simply. He said that Zion and Jerusalem have never been forgotten by the Jewish people. No matter how many years it's been since the temple's destruction, we have not forgotten. Every day we pray 3 times a day. What direction do we face? Well, it depends where you are. Not in South Africa. In South Africa, we face north. Yeah? What direction is this? North. In America, you face east. In Russia, you face west. In Australia, you face south. Well, from Europe, depending where you were, Mizrach, most likely you were playing east. Yeah. But the truth is, here you're praying Tzafon, not Mizrach. What's the point? You're praying towards Jerusalem. No matter where you are in the world, we look for Jerusalem. So it's not about north per se, it's about Jerusalem per se. Yeah, because there they said Mizrach, which is east. Because from where they were, they prayed east. Pardon? We pray north, but it's not about that direction. It's about towards Jerusalem. That's the idea. And every day in our prayers, we mention Jerusalem. And in our prayers, think about how many things we do and say about Jerusalem. Never forgotten. Next year in Jerusalem, right? And while it's just the bricks and mortar of the temple that was destroyed, we know its spirit lived on in our temples, in our shuls, in our beis midrash, in our houses of worship, in our places of study. So we're not comforted for the destruction of the temple, no matter how long it's been. The temple's not dead. It's not truly dead for us. The Shekhinah, for sure. And if you go to the Western Wall, you'll experience it there. Let's read it here in the words of Rabbi Moshe Sofer, the Chassam Sofer. He says, the sages tell us that Tisha B'Av is called a holiday on which we do not say tachnun, supplication prayers. How could it achieve the status of a holiday when, unlike every other holiday, we do not offer any holiday sacrifice to God? Like I said, in the book of Eicha, in Lamentations itself, we describe how it's called a holiday. Says Rabbi Moshe Sofer, this can be understood by contemplating how for close to 2,000 years, during which we have been given all the blessings in the world, the Jewish people have yet to forget what happened on Tisha B'Av and have yet to dry our eyes from the tragedy. Every other nation and tug that has managed to forget their past calamities in light of their current blessings. Why are the Jewish people different? We are different because we do not accept consolation for the living. Whereas God decrees the dead to eventually be forgotten from one's heart, all other nations have no hope to return to what they've lost, and therefore they forget. We, the Jewish people, still have hope. We await the day in the future when God will descend below, wreathed in the flame, and his righteous ones will live again and see and be satisfied from his goodness. Do you see this beautiful concept that he is saying here? We do not accept consolation for the living, and therefore our mourning is actually for us the deepest comfort. It is called a great holiday, for it shows that we still know we will one day return to things as they were in the days of old in our youth. Chadesh Yameinu Kikedem, because we will return to better days. So the sadness of Tisha B'Av, my friends, is not a despondence or dejection, God forbid. Our sadness is a form of resistance to the cause of our sadness. Our sadness is in a way itself a form of joy, if you think of it. It's the springboard for joy. It's a celebration of the fact, the dream of a future, an era of redemption, of Mashiach, of a future temple, that it's still alive, that those embers weren't extinguished, that they're still within us. And Tisha B'Av is the Jewish demand for the promised future. It's when we cry out again, Ad Masai, when our tears will be tears of joy and transformed into happy days. And so this sentiment that our sadness is really the impetus for our eventual joy is a very important point. And we see this in the Gemara, in the tractate of Tainus, which many people study on Tisha B'Av, What does it say? It's actually a song that we like to sing. You know the song? Simchu et Yerushalayim gilu ba. You know the song? Gilu ba kol ohaveh. Sisu et Yerushalayim gilu ba kol ohaveh. Al chomatay chir David ifkadeti shomrim kol hayom vekol הלילה. על חומותייך עיר דוד הפקדתי שומרים כל היום וכל הלילה. So here the Gemara is quoting this verse from Tehillim, actually not Tehillim, it's a verse from Yeshayahu. Isaiah the prophet says, Simchu es Yerushalayim v'gilu ba. Rejoice that Jerusalem and be glad with her. Kol ohaveh, all who love her. And he says, Mesos kol met avlim aleh. Rejoice for joy with her. All kol hamit ablim Allah. What does that mean? All who mourn for her. Notice these words. Says the Gemara, from this we learn, you know what? Kol hamis abela Yerushalayim. That whoever mourns for Jerusalem, zoiche v'roya b'simchasa, will merit to see her joy. V'she'ena mis abel Yerushalayim. And whoever does not mourn for Jerusalem, eine roya b'simchasa, will not merit to see the joy of Jerusalem. And this, my friends, is a very important point, because if you notice here that when the Talmud speaks of celebrating the joy of Jerusalem, it speaks in the future tense. It's speaking, let's go again, simchu, it's speaking in the present tense, not in the future, right? And this is because, as the Chassam Sofer explains here, our mourning itself is a form of celebration. And the whole story of our people, it's not over. I mean, you would think it would have been over long ago. But like the book of Lamentations, which describes the saddest eras and periods of our history, our calamities and tragedies, but it doesn't finish without comfort and consolation. And it says, we'll renew our days like in days of old, right? We believe in the coming of Mashiach. We believe in a better future. We already see in our days the return of Jerusalem to its full magnificence and glory, and we will see it even more so. And this is the point I'm telling everybody that we have to realize, is that Tisha B'Av, as sad as a day that it is also a day that we have to realize there's a far greater future that lies ahead. And because it is a sad day, yes, it's true, but it also ends, it's also called a Yom Tov. And we also see how better times are going to come for us. And therefore, while I'm going to now pick up the laws and customs of Tisha B'Av, I want to review them with you. Just looking for them on my phone. I'm going to look for, there's a particular rabbi in Australia who puts them out quite nicely. So I want to look for his layout of it. But while I'm looking for it, I think it's an important discussion we can have about how to transform our Tisha B'Av into, yes, we're still going to observe all these customs, but at the same time, we realize that there's better days to come. And while it's a sad day, it's also a holiday. And in fact, I invite you to come tomorrow, where we're going to talk more about the sadness as a cause for celebrating something, because it's not truly gone. The temple is destroyed, but it lives on in us. And we know there's a greater future ahead, right? So don't be sad. Don't be, what's the word we used before? Don't allow this to, yes, thank you. Yep. Don't be melancholy. Good. All right. So all these are important points. But what I'm going to get to tomorrow is a shir that I previously prepared. But I always like to enhance it year after year, so we'll make it even better. It's Out of the Depths, Finding Faith in Difficult Times. And what we're going to do tomorrow is look at how some tragic incidents of the past, such as the Holocaust and people who experienced October 7th, and the joy they are doing, the ways they've managed to live and move forward. One of the Ramba Swarovski, who was one of the hostages who spent time in Gaza, unfortunately in the tunnels, one of the last ones to be released, how we removed his tattoos last week. We'll talk about how other tragic events, I'm putting together the slides, maybe we'll have some videos too. And the point I want to do here with you is to have this experience together and learn how we can also, whatever difficulties we might be enduring, how we can also experience better times and transform them. And look at some verses, some Torah sources, look at some stories, and play a fun game that will help us to deal with our own difficulties, just as we mourn on Tisha B'Av for the past, but we grow forward in our future. So that's, please God, tomorrow's shiur. But we're not done yet for today. What I'm going to do today, I'm just trying to pick this up. If it's not coming, I'll just do it off my phone. But to have the laws and customs of Tisha B'Av to learn with you, because I think it's important for us to know it, even though we said we're going to transform it into a day of joy, right? But still, there are customs, there are laws, there are regulations of how we observe Tisha B'Av. So let's learn those and know what we have to do. So the customs that you're probably already familiar with are, what are the things you're familiar with that we don't do on Tisha B'Av? Well, let's start with what you do. A few of you are coming tomorrow. Some people mentioned you're going to the bris. I'm also going to go to the bris. It's a relative. My cousins had a baby, and they're going to be having a bris tomorrow. Effie Schiff is mother, his grandmother is a Kiefman. So we're going to have the bris tomorrow. So if you have a simcha, Dani K, who's our bookkeeper upstairs, she became a grandmother. If you know, what's her name? Jessie K, it's her great grandchild. So it's a simcha to celebrate. And so a bris or a pidyon haben should be ideally conducted before midday tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're starting with tomorrow rules. One should not engage in enjoyable or leisurely activities tomorrow, starting from midday. What time is that tomorrow? 12 something? About 12:26 p.m. One learns only those parts of Torah which may be studied on Tisha B'Av. So you can learn the laws of Tisha B'Av, but if you want to study your Chitas, your Chumash portion, or other Rambam or Daf Yomi, you should complete it before midday tomorrow. And if you're running late, then they say it can be studied anytime until sunset. Okay. A siyum is made as per the rest of the 9 days. If after midday, it should be performed on a Masechta with a concluding topic that may be learned on Tisha B'Av, such as Moed Katan, because it has more melancholy, morose themes. And one should eat and drink sufficiently. I don't know why I forgot to take my water bottle with me today. I'll go to the shops and get one. But we should eat and drink plenty. Be well hydrated, because you don't want to be thirsty or hungry on Tisha B'Av, okay? Now, there is a meal we eat before Tisha B'Av starts. It's called Su'uda Amafsekas. But before we get to the Su'uda Amafsekas, pardon? Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a moment. But in the morning tomorrow, besides or till tomorrow afternoon, you can eat whatever you like besides for meat and wine. In fact, if you're going to the bris, I don't know that they're going to serve meat, but they're allowed to. It's a Sudas mitzvah. And a Sudas mitzvah, you can eat meat. So we'll see if there's going to be meat at the bris tomorrow. But it's before midday. After midday, we get more stringent, which is why one shouldn't do a bris or pidyon haben later in the day tomorrow, but rather ideally earlier. Now, when could you do a bris late tomorrow? Only if, let's say, the child may have been jaundiced before and now the doctor makes a last-minute decision, then it can be done in the afternoon. But otherwise, ideally, it should be done in the morning. Mincha tomorrow is ideally davened earlier. If you look at shul schedules, many shuls are doing it 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever it is. Okay? Tachanun is omitted from Mincha onward. Now, this is very interesting. Not only that we're not going to recite Mincha tomorrow, we're not going to recite Mincha on Tisha B'Av itself. And that's ironic. It's the saddest day in our calendar, and yet we don't recite Mincha. We don't say Tachanun. But this is important for us to be aware of, because remember, while it's the saddest day in our calendar, it is also a day, like we said, it's going to be transformed into joy. Let's talk about the Su'uda Mafsekes, as you asked. So first of all, your last meal of the day should just be a little bit of bread and a cold, hard-boiled egg dipped into ashes. You could also drink water, tea, coffee, or any other non-alcoholic beverages, but don't eat too much. And from personal experience, you don't want to stuff yourself at the end of the day. It makes for an unpleasant Tisha B'Av experience. The Sudam Afsekes is eaten when sitting on a low chair or on the ground, but you could still be wearing your leather shoes. Shira Malos is recited before benching, but a mizumana is not made. Ideally, 3 adults should avoid eating the meal together in the first place. So it's not the kind of meal, Erev Yom Kippur, we always invite people to come have the meal with us before Yom Kippur begins. It's nice, especially those that don't have a place to go, come join us for the meal. We don't do that with Tisha B'Av. You sit here, you sit there. You don't have to all be together. You don't have to sit together. Doesn't mean you can't. If you sit together, it's all right, but ideally not. Yeah. Before benching, one should verbally stipulate that he might still eat or drink again before the fast begins. Here in Johannesburg, the fast begins at 5:34 p.m. tomorrow. If one neglected to do so, you could still eat or drink until 5:34 p.m. After benching, one may resume sitting on a regular chair until Tisha B'Av begins. After Plag HaMincha, if one accepted, whether verbally or in thought, to begin the fast, one may no longer eat, and all the prohibitions of Tisha B'Av apply. Even so, leather shoes may still be worn until the fast begins. Okay, so fast begins, what time? I told you? 5:34 p.m. tomorrow. Got it? It ends, in case you're not going to stay through to the end of my instructions, it ends at 6:01 p.m. on Thursday. It's easier here than many other parts of the world. I've experienced Tisha B'Av in Europe. I've experienced it in the States. It's winter here. It's shorter. What's that? It's a very long day. The difference is, though, it's the same amount of hours, but it will start much later. So I checked in New York. My daughter's flying from Florida to Johannesburg tomorrow. And in New York, it starts about 8:34 p.m., something like that. So she gets on a plane then. She gets on a plane at like 10 p.m. So she has an hour of the fast before she gets on the plane. I said, Tzipi, just sleep through the flight. When she arrives in Joburg, the fast will already be over. She arrives 6:30 p.m. tomorrow, and the fast ends at 6:01. So she gets a double discount. She gets a discount on that side because here it starts 5:30, and there it starts closer to 9 p.m. So she gets a 4 hours there, and she gets the rest of the time difference here. It's 6-hour difference, and the fast ends much earlier. So pretty much she gets a 14-hour fast. Why is she traveling? It's the only day that was found a ticket available. Not the ideal, but a good way to get a discounted Tisha B'Av. Whereas if you're going from Joburg to there is the wrong direction to go, you'll get extra hours of Tisha B'Av. All right. In Shul, the parochas is removed from the Aron Kodesh or drawn aside. The lights in Shul are dimmed to a bare minimum. Nonetheless, the Chazan lights the usual number of candles, 5 for a chiyuv and 2 for a non-chiyuv. After Shemana Esrei, the Chazan recites Kaddish to Skabel. This is after Ma'ariv. Eicha is recited together with the Chazan. One should recite it while seated on a low chair as opposed to standing. The Chazan recites Eicha unhurriedly, pausing between each pasuk and raising his voice slightly at the beginning of each parak. The final pasuk, the one we did before, Hashivayinu, is recited aloud with the Chazan, followed by a few short words of kinos, of eulogies that we say on Tisha B'Av. After that, one who davens without a minyan still recites Eicha and Kinos. The Ata Kadosh is recited, followed by full Kaddish, excluding the line beginning to Skabel and then Aleinu. I'm still looking for our program. There are always nice, meaningful Tisha B'Av programs, so I'm looking for something meaningful to do. So if you've got any suggestions and a nice film to show, I'm open to hear. Okay. It is not our custom to sleep on the floor nor place a stone under the pillow, but that being said, it is a custom of other people to do so. Yep. I had a teacher when I was in elementary school who told me to put sand or pebbles in my shoes. Oh, I think it was because I had leather shoes. He said, if you have leather shoes and I couldn't walk barefoot, he said, put some sand or pebbles inside your shoe to make your leather shoe uncomfortable. Okay, learning on Tisha B'Av. Let's learn some of the rules. On Tisha B'Av, one may only learn parts of Torah that deal with the laws of mourning, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, or tragedies that befell our nation throughout history. One should learn these in a cursory manner without delving into them analytically. Similarly, one should not consult a Rav about non-urgent halachic matters unrelated to Tisha B'Av. Needless to say, the obligation to learn Torah at every available moment still applies fully on Tisha B'Av. Many have lamented the lax attitude some people sadly adopt towards learning on Tisha B'Av. Okay? So just remember that we have to learn every free moment. I was amazed yesterday, Sybil, who's 94, Kananahara, who was here, she's turning, her grandson was visiting from the UK. And even noticed the young boy, Yossi, he sat right over there. What was he doing? While you were eating lunch, he pulled out a sefer and was learning. Put his ear pods in, listened to the shiur, it's unbelievable. And that is exemplary. Sybil, you could have lots of nachas from your grandson. And I say that to all of us too. Carpe diem, chaparain. Don't let a moment go be wasted. Don't let a moment pass away. Can't kill any moments. Yes, Rebbe. 100%. As we said here, you still should learn on Tisha B'Av. It's not a day to waste away. It should be something related to the morning of Tisha B'Av. And there's plenty parts of Torah, like Eicha, like Eov, like Jeremiah, like so many parts of the Talmud, and many other laws that are related to mourning, and therefore those are the parts. And this is the time to study those. The Rebbe Rashab would learn the sugya, the sections of the Talmud in Gittin, as well as Medrash Eicha Rabbah, that deal with tragedy. Some other appropriate texts, like I said, Eicha and Eov, the dire prophecies of Jeremiah, the tractate Moed Katan, Masechta Taanis and Yerushalmi. There's Tzemach Tzedek's Rishimas on Eicha, he writes, and other elements, the halachas of the day. One should endeavor to participate in a siyum as per the rest of the 9 days. The siyum should be on a Masechta with a concluding topic that may be learned on Tisha B'Av, such as we said before, Moed Katan. One should give extra tzedakah, charity, especially before Mincha. As we read in the Haftorah this past Shabbos, Tziyam b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh b'tzedakah, that Zion, Tziyam b'mishpat tipada, Zion will be redeemed through justice and its captives through acts of charity. So we should give extra charity, and it says it is proper to give the value of the meals that are forgone, especially if one is exempt from fasting. So, for example, if one is frail and they can't fast, or elderly, and the doctor says don't fast, then you should ideally give charity in place of your fasting, extra charity. Here are the restrictions and prohibitions of Tisha B'Av. Ready? On Tisha B'Av, it is prohibited to wear festive clothing or festive jewelry. Okay? Wear footwear containing any leather. One may wear all non-leather footwear, including Crocs. Okay, so if one has to go to work and look like a mensch, ideally one doesn't go to work. But if you have to go to work and you have to look like a mensch, then one should consult with a Rav what to do. We don't go to the mikveh, bathe, or wash any part of our body, even in cold water. One may not even wipe himself with a cloth that is damp enough to moisten what it touches. One may rinse if necessary for medical, therapeutic, or pain relief purposes. One may also rinse any soiled areas, but only as necessary. Similarly, one may wash their hands up to the knuckles after exiting the bathroom or touching an area of the body that is normally covered. One may also rinse their hands in the usual manner before and during food preparation. All this may be done with soap if necessary, or with antiseptic, or with sanitizer. One may also wash dishes, though it is best to do so while wearing gloves. Okay? Just so you know. We do not apply makeup, ointment, lotions, deodorant, perfumes, creams, unless necessary for medical or therapeutic or pain relief purposes. Got it? Yes, you could put on before Tisha B'Av begins. If you want to do it at 5:30 tomorrow, where you have 4 minutes to put on your makeup or that, you can do so. Yeah. Even for Yom Kippur. Just don't do it on. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I think so. Yeah. Okay? We do not brush our teeth or rinse our mouth, even if the liquid is completely expelled. We do not sit on regular high chairs until midday, unless one is frail or infirm, pregnant, or nursing. Of course, when you sit in the car, I don't think you have another option. So we do not engage in intimacy on Tisha B'Av. We don't greet each other in the normal way. Maybe a fist pump or a elbow pump. Think of COVID. Remember how we greeted each other in COVID? That's Tisha B'Av, okay? Oh, you could do a fist pump. Nod. That's fine. You don't give that same effervescent, beautiful, loving, smile-filled, hoe gaan dit, meneer, mevrouw? Okay. You don't have to give the same lekker susse cracker that you do on a regular day. We don't give gifts. Charities allowed. We don't study, go to work, engage in business activity, or perform any job or task that requires focus and will distract us from mourning. Now, technically, these are permitted after midday, but it's best to refrain even then. Again, like I said before, if one has to do these things, if one will experience financial loss if they don't go to work, then one can do so if needed, with the best to consult with a rabbi how to do it. We don't instruct others to work publicly on our behalf, such as contractors. However, one may instruct a non-Jew to do any other work, even if it will be performed in our own home. One should not be idle, go on trips, read novels or articles, or engage in any other leisurely or entertaining pastimes and activities. Hence, I bemoan those who watch movies on Tisha B'Av, unless it is a Schindler's List. I don't think it's appropriate. Okay, smoking. Yeah, you can read books in the Holocaust. I think that's relevant, sure. Don't destroy your temple. It was destroyed already. No, we said before. We said it earlier. Yeah, no, you were whatever. Anyways, we don't read those. Maybe you weren't here, but the point is, we don't read those books. We read those books. Those are the books we read. Jeremiah. I would say even if it's a secular book, a novel, you're reading something that don't read Harry Potter, but you could read something about the Holocaust or October 7th or any of those. I think that's okay. Who must fast? The ill, elderly, mothers who gave birth within the past month, or pregnant and nursing women who feel or anticipate excessive difficulty should consult a Rav, or if one has to take medicines. One who mistakenly ate during the fast must immediately resume fasting. One may not taste food to determine whether it requires salt, spices, even for a Sudas mitzvah right after the fast. So say you're going to a bris, you need to prepare that salad. You can't taste. You can prepare the food on Tisha B'Av, right? A lot of people do that. They're preparing the breakfast, but you can't taste it. Again, like I said, if a person's sick and has to eat, then there are certain measurements how they do it. Children below bar bas mitzvah need not fast. From age 9, the custom is to train children to fast at night and for several hours during midday, according to each child's ability. One should not be unduly strict in this regard. An individual exempt from fasting should eat in private only and avoid meat, delicacies, or excessive intake. Similarly, children old enough to understand the concept of a fast should avoid meat, delicacies, or treats. Bread is best avoided so as to sidestep a number of disputes regarding how to wash and bench on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av morning, negavasar is washed only up to the knuckles. Ideally, prepare negavasar in a slightly different way as a reminder not to wash your hands in the usual manner. I would say just prepare a little bit in your wash basin. One wipes his eyes with the towel moistened by his hands. One who rinses the flakes out of his eyes every morning may do so on Tisha B'Av. So, if you get those flakes, or if your eyes are covered, well, if you can't drive without them or you won't be able to see without them, you for sure can. Yeah, absolutely. That's not considered eating. It's not considered a moisture. I would say absolutely use your eye drops. After getting dressed, you would do negavasar again. Anytime you go to the bathroom, wash your hands properly, but only up to your knuckles. Again, reminder, if you got to use that boudet, or if you got to wash your hands because you touched something, you can wash them properly. You should use soap. You should use your sanitizer or whatever you have to. because we don't want to be spreading disease. I'm only talking about for leisure purposes, not to wash your hands. Okay. In the morning, we omit the bracha sha'asadi kotzarki. Talis and tefillin are not worn until after midday. Likewise, a bracha is not recited on the talis katan. The tzitzis are not held or kissed at Baruch She'amar and Shema. The chazan lights candles as usual. Pardon? Because you don't have all your needs. For example, you're not eating and you're not wearing leather shoes. Yeah, only after midday. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no birchas kohanim and shacharis, and tachanan is omitted as well. Okay. An individual who won't be fasting must still hear kriyas haTorah, but is not called up for an aliyah. If he is the only Kohen or Levi, he should step out of the room. Even so, if he was already called up, he may accept the aliyah, even though he's not fasting. He should not serve as the Baal Korah unless no one else can. In any case, he may perform Hagbah or Glila. Kaddish is recited between the last aliyah and haftarah. During the Glila, between the last aliyah and haftarah, I guess, yeah, at the end, after the last aliyah. During Glila and haftarah, the Magbiya holds the Sefer Torah while sitting on a regular high chair. You are holding a Torah scroll, and therefore it is given an extra level of honor. Okay, so he sits in a regular chair. The Sefer Torah is returned to the Aron Kodesh right after the haftarah. Afterwards, Kinnos is recited. One should recite it while seated on a low chair as opposed to standing. One should refrain from casual conversation or other unnecessary interruptions during the recital of Kinnos. After Kinnos, we say Ashrei of Alitzion, omitting the pasuk beginning Va'anizos Brisi, and Aleinu. Everything else, including Tehillim, is postponed till after Mincha. So when do we do Eicha? Sorry, on Tisha B'Av day. When is Eicha said? Don't we say Eicha? Some people do. Huh? After Kinnos, okay. All right. Here you go. He actually says it. After Levatzion, the Chazan omits the line beginning to Skabel. Echiyov recites the third parak of Mishnayos, and then the final Kaddish. One should recite the book of Eicha after completing Kinnos and davening. There we go. Where possible, one should time their morning with the aim of concluding Kinnos and Eicha shortly before midday rather than long beforehand. A bris should be postponed until after Kinnos. The baby's parents and Balei bris may wear Shabbos clothing for the duration of the bris, but not leather shoes. The sandik sits on a regular height chair while the bris is performed. The bracha is recited on wine, which is then drunk by a child who understands the concept of brachas. The younger, the better. The Suda takes place at night after the fast. I was at last year. Was it last year? I think last year, I believe I was at a bris right after the fast on Tisha B'Av. And recently also, I think maybe the 10th of Teves too. So it's something that is done. And everybody who was at the bris may drink wine and eat meat. It is not our custom to specifically visit a cemetery on Tisha B'Av. Some people do that. Okay, I'm going to do one more section and then we're going to conclude for today. And remember, tomorrow we are going to talk about out of the depths, finding faith in difficult times. In the afternoon, the intensity morning lessons and some restrictions are relaxed. It's customary to wait until midday before preparing the post-fast meal. Thank you for that reminder before Fegi. However, one may begin preparations for a Sudas mitzvah before midday. After midday, it's permitted to sit on regular height chairs, unless one is still finishing the Kinnos. You can do your regular learning after midday, chitas, etc. After midday and before Mincha, the Parachas is restored to its usual place in Aron Kodesh. Mincha is longer than usual due to Kriyas HaTorah and Haftarah. One should be timed to conclude before sunset. What time is sunset now? Anyone know? Shabbos comes out at 6. Last week, candle lighting care. We're going to pick it up on our app. It says sunset today is at 5:36 p.m. Okay, so somewhere around 5:36, make sure you're done Mincha. And all the other parts that are done before Mincha, one puts on talis and tefillin and recites the entire Shema, followed by the selections omitted from the conclusion of Shachris. Shir Shayom Enkel Lekenu Tehillim. These, my friends, should be recited with a minyan and kaddish is said at the appropriate places. Kriyas Torah should not begin before Mincha Gedola. That's mid-afternoon. Shemona Esrei must certainly not begin before then. Passage of Ayichal is read, provided there are at least 3 congregants who are fasting. Ladies and gents, I'm going to have to run now, so I'm going to conclude it here, but make sure tomorrow to join us, where we'll continue with some of the laws and customs that we didn't get to conclude today, as well as a fascinating shiur about dealing with faith. How do you have faith in difficult, challenging times? Look forward to see you all tomorrow, please God, and enjoy lunch today. See you tomorrow, please God. There will not be, Dorit will not come tomorrow for 9 days. No music, so we'll not have Dorit tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. See you soon.